I want to welcome you to Scratch Foundation's live Create Along to celebrate Hour of Code 2024 with our special guest, inspiring young scientist and innovator Gitanjali Rao. Hour of Code is a global initiative by Computer Science Education Week and Code.org to introduce millions of students to 1 hour of computer science and computer programming. And I'm excited you're spending this hour with us. My name is Maren Vernon. I'm an algorithmer on Scratch. I'm a learning resource designer on the Scratch team, and I had the great pleasure of collaborating with our guest on 2 Scratch projects that we'll be exploring today that celebrate invention and kindness. Gitanjali, welcome. I'm excited to dive into these projects inspired by your innovations and advocacy. But first, do you mind please introducing yourself to our audience and maybe you can share what you like to do to spark creativity? For instance, one
Yeah,
of our scratchers wondered, do you play an instrument or paint or?
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Marion, for having me, and thank you, Scratch Foundation and Hour of Code for this, first of all, incredible opportunity to just like sit down and you know watch code, and also just talk about the importance of computer science. Um, to introduce myself, my name is Gitanjali. I'm currently 19 years old. I'm a sophomore in college. I'm studying at MIT and I'm double majoring in bioengineering and business management. A lot of kind of where my ideas and research and my creativity kind of sparks from is kind of this overarching idea of how big the world is, how many different fields there are, and how many different things we can do, right? I really carry myself with this idea of you can do anything that you want, right? You can do anything that you put your mind to. And so I like to really, really think outside the box when it comes up with coming up with solutions, because there is nothing holding us back, especially as youth, right? It's important to take risks when it doesn't matter versus when it does. So that's my big driving force and my motivation. A lot of my creativity actually does come from some of the things that all of you guys are talking about. I do play an instrument. I've played the piano for forever, and I played electric bass in a band with my friends as well. And then along with that, I spent so much time writing and painting for myself, for my friends, and it's just a great way to creatively express myself. Big believer that you need both sides of your brain to come up with the best solutions.
I love all of that. I connect with all of that, although I do not play electric bass. But that is amazing, and I really love your passion, and also just how big you think that nothing is too big to contemplate and take interest in and explore. I really can't wait to ask you more questions about your invention process and your work in a moment. But first, let's just dive into our first activity option, share it with our friends at home. So I am going to share my Scratch screen. And what you'll see here is Scratch Cat's account. And on that account, you'll find a link to the starter project that Scratch Cat has shared that we're going to work through today. You can also find that link in the video description if you need it. If you have a Scratch account, sign in now to be sure your work is saved. For those without an account yet, I'll share more about how to save your work in a moment. In this project, our Invention Station project, which we'll look at first, you can explore and create your own invention, share the invention's goal or purpose through text or a voice recording, and learn about Gitanjali's innovation process. So I'm just going to play the project now to hear the opening instructions.
Hi, I'm Gitanjali Rao. Welcome to the Invention Station. When I'm inventing, I like to build my idea as soon as possible so that I'm able to visualize it and I have more motivation to keep going. In this project, you can drag each object to the box to create your own invention. Remix this project and add your own object sprites. You can also customize the objects using the Paint editor. Add code to animate them. Record a message to play or write a message about what your invention does and what it's called when the My Invention button is clicked. Create something awesome that helps the world.
So thank you, Gitanjali, for your voiceover there. And hopefully we got a character that looked like you, was a nice, inspired by you. So we've got some objects in our project here that we can test out. We can drag them to the box to see what they do. And we've just come up with a few little objects. A few little objects here in kind of our invention starter kit. But while I'm sort of tinkering and checking out this project, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is hit that remix button. If you're logged into Scratch, you should see a remix button here in the upper corner. And go ahead and click that button now. If you aren't logged into Scratch, that's okay. You can still manipulate the code and the project along with us, and then download a file of your version to your computer to save it for later. But as we start to tinker with this project, I also want to point out it could be helpful to download our Hour of Code coding cards. We made some cards focused on some things you can do with the project, some of which we'll try during this create along. So you can find the link to those also in the video description below. But to start, let's see what some items do when we drag them to the box. We can kind of cobble them together to create our own unique invention. And while I ask some questions of Gitanjali, I'm going to encourage you to click the See Inside button up here, which will bring you inside so you can see some of the code that we have in place and kind of experiment to see if you can figure out what this code does. A few of the items actually have some code that encourages something to happen when you drag them to the box and animates them, but not every item has that code. So you'll see some just have a little bit of code and some have a little bit more. So poke around as I'm asking some questions of Gitanjali for the moment. See if you can explore and see what some things do. Maybe try adding some code if you're ready to animate some objects. Look for blocks maybe in the sounds, looks, or motion categories. Okay, so while I'm playing around with this on the screen, Gitanjali, while we are exploring this code and doing some tinkering, I'm wondering if you could share a bit more about your invention process. Because I know that when our Scratchers are thinking about creating a project, they may first brainstorm some ideas and sketch out a plan. And then while creating, they may need to debug or find errors in their code, or maybe gather feedback from users as they think about making adjustments. So I'm curious, what is your process? What inspires you to invent? Where do you find help when you get stuck? And maybe do you have a user testing process when your inventions are ready to be shared?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess first and foremost, it's super, super normal to either have a process or not have a process. That's kind of the beauty of innovation. Loving the noises in the background too.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's great backtrack. But I think one of the biggest things that I've kind of learned through the process is that failure is such an important part of it. And usually that's not what people start with when it comes to any sort of process, right? They don't start with the part that you mess up on. But I think that's part of one of the biggest reasons I'm able to take projects so far is because I'm allowed to mess up and find out kind of the best version of what it is, right? Half of the solutions that are going to be the best ideas in the world aren't even built yet, and they're built on top of failures. And I think that's important to really, really emphasize and put out there, because failure is just another step to success at the end of the day. Along with that, you see my innovation process in the background, actually. It says observe, brainstorm, research, build, and communicate, right? And it's 5 simple words. And I think that if you can make innovation into 5 words, you can quite literally do anything in life. But I think when you break down this kind of 5-step process, the first step is observe, right? So identify problems in your community that are important to you and you only. So when I run my workshops, I start with this big idea of what do you like and what do you not like about it? And how are we going to change that? And that's exactly where the innovation process starts, right? Finding a problem you are genuinely passionate about and finding ways to make it better. Now, secondly, I like to say brainstorming is one of the most important parts, because I say quantity over quality. So write down as many ideas as you possibly can come up with. And at this stage, there's no such thing as a bad idea, because you're able to narrow it down at that third step, which is research, right? So look at what already exists, look at what's already been done. But on top of that, take the time to really break down these ideas that you brainstormed and see what truly needs to be done out there. When I think of researching, I always look at impact versus feasibility, right? which one of my solutions is giving me the most impact and is also the most doable. And then after that, you build it, you bring it to life, obviously, as soon as you can. Once you're able to visualize it, it makes the process a lot easier. And last but not least, you tell people about it, you get the feedback, and you start all the way over from the beginning, which sounds exhausting. But when you think about, innovation, the process of innovation, there's not really a deadline to it. Creativity doesn't have a deadline, and it never will, right? And it's kind of like finding things that truly make you excited and passionate about continuing this process too. And so remember, it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to try things again. No one's stopping you from, building an idea in the long term. An idea can take, for example, my lead detection tool, which I'm sure we'll get to, will take me, took me 3 months to build, but other ideas of mine have taken me 3 years. So it's really up to you how you want to navigate the innovation process. That's what makes it so flexible and beautiful.
Again, I love all of that. I've just shared on the screen a link to the cards that are linked in our video description. So you can see we have a copy of your innovation process there in our cards. And one of the things we always like to talk about on Scratch is debugging and iterating, fixing little things, making changes. But I also love the fact that sometimes it just takes kind of getting it out there in the world, and then you can keep tinkering with it because maybe as you're communicating and talking with others, they have additional ideas to share. And that's something that we love to do on Scratch is share projects and get feedback from others. Really, I think sometimes inventions start as inspiration from another source. And so you can remix ideas, right? You can add things, change things, remove things. And then as you iterate, you're imagining, creating, sharing, and reflecting over and over again until you're satisfied with the result. So sometimes you don't need to make something brand new. You can take an idea and improve on it. And that's something that we're encouraging here, right? As you're remixing our project, you're taking what we've started and improving on it and elaborating with your own thoughts.
Yeah, and Maren, if I could add something to that too, I think something I really, really like to say that I hope you guys can take it away with you is, novel ideas don't have to be built from scratch, right? We're not all the Albert Einsteins of the world out there. And I'm sure there are some listening to this live stream. But at the end of the day, the best ideas are the ones that are just ideas put together in a way that nobody has seen before. So novelty is what you make out of it. So look at what already exists and build upon it. That's the beauty of kind of innovation versus invention.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that I will just show is we are sort of playing around with the project. You may have noticed while we were talking, I was sort of experimenting with some different blocks to try to change our items. So we could try to do things like change the color of things. If I go, there's that little noise again. If I go to my button sprite, for instance, I can go and change the color of the button sprite using a code block. I could rotate it, change its size, change its color or brightness, or I could also do that using our paint editor tools. So one of the things I want to point out is when you are on a sprite, if you go to our costumes tab, you're here in the paint editor, and here you can also make adjustments to objects. So if I want to say change the color of an object, I can select it and pick a different color here from my color palette. I may want to rotate it in this screen and change the look of it here. And you can see it over here on the side. It is adjusting. Now, of course, because I've only changed one of the costumes, it's going to kind of have some interesting behavior when it gets clicked. So I might want to then make those same adjustments on another costume if I want to change it that way. But there's lots of different ways that you can manipulate things depending on what you're comfortable with in Scratch. I could also go back and use blocks like here in my looks category. I may want to change the size of it. I could go down here and look at an effect and maybe change the color that way. So different ways that you can manipulate objects while you're customizing this project in Scratch. Another thing that you can use is the reshape tool to change just little points on the object, little parts of the shape. And we can create a completely new sprite. So there's a sprite up here at the top that says add your own object. And so in this, we've just got some basic code that we've got you as a starter, and our costume says add your object here. So if we have something we feel like is missing from this invention, we can add it here and then use it in our invention. Now, with the caveat that I am not the world's greatest artist, let's see if I can draw something here to add to our invention. I'm going to throw it to you, Gitanjali. Do you have any ideas of what might be missing from our invention box kit here that we could add, that I could attempt to draw? No pressure.
It wasn't letting me unmute for a bit. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna challenge you because I'm feeling challenging today. Do you
Okay.
you want to draw a monkey? That's my favorite animal.
Now, that is a challenge. Let's see how I do. And the one thing that I love that I always heard many years ago was there are no mistakes in art. And so my style is going to be probably different than what somebody else is going to come up with. But you know what? I'm going to try my best. I'm going to have a growth mindset about this. And I'm going to try to draw that. While I'm doing that, I will say that we have gathered some questions from educators and members of our Youth Advisory Board in preparation for today. So I'd love to quickly give a shout out to the Youth Advisory Board who helped create some of our project remixes to start our studio, and many of whom are helping curate our Hour of Code studio, along with some other helpful scratchers. The Scratch Youth Advisory Board is one of our exciting new programs. If you haven't heard of it, it's designed to enable Scratchers from our community to collaborate with the Scratch team by providing insights about Scratch from a youth perspective and contributing to the continued growth of Scratch. So Scratchers from around the globe applied by making Scratch projects, of course, to be part of the board. And our first cohort has been really engaged and active. So I just want to say thanks to them and all of our Scratch community helpers who really help make events like our Hour of Code studio a success. Okay, so I'm going to try to draw this monkey and animate it to the best of my ability. But while I'm doing that, maybe Gitanjali, could you tell us a bit more about some of your inventions, like Tethys that detects lead in drinking water, or other things that other inventions we may be less familiar with?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is like I probably have like at least 6 or 7 that I've actually built, but I probably have like hundreds and hundreds that I just haven't brought to life yet. So Tethys is it's the one I'm most known for. It's a lead detection tool. It's built on carbon nanotube sensor technology, and it sends all the data to your mobile phone on an app that I built as well. And I'm happy to say, as of the past 2 years, it's now a patented solution. And Tethys was kind of inspired after the Flint water crisis, but also hearing about how so many people don't have clean water to drink when it should be a basic right. And when I was building a tool like that, it felt like common sense that everyone deserved clean water. And so I wanted to kind of come up with a way that we were able to kind of identify and help with that lack of knowledge of contamination as well. So that's kind of where that started, and that's grown since. And right now I'm partnering with mass manufacturing companies to see if we can scale it and test it in places like Flint and all across the world as well. Along with that, another solution I'm super passionate about is called Epione, which is named after the Greek goddess of soothing of pain. Hopefully you're catching on to a theme.
Yeah.
But Epione is the big punchline. It's the first ever clinical tool to diagnose or prescription opiate addiction. So it utilizes protein detection methods to be able to look at a gene that's in all of our bodies called the mu opioid receptor, and to see how much protein it produces and how that correlates directly to a status of addiction, which I think is pretty cool because right now all the tests in the market out there are based on psychological assessments. And so I wanted to come up with a clinical foolproof tool so that we're able to address this issue, especially in an area as stigmatized as opioid addiction, specifically prescription opioid addiction. And last but not least, as I'm watching you create this monkey, which is looking kind
It's
of
a little more
scary.
like a bear.
It's okay. You can change it to a bear if that makes you happy. But I think it's because the ears need to be on the side of the face.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
See, this is why we get feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Innovation. But the last one that I'll talk about is called Kindly, which started out as a prototype and escaped a Greek name, which is exciting because I evolved from my Percy Jackson phase, I guess. And Kindly utilizes machine learning algorithms to be basically the spell check of cyberbullying. And it started out as a prototype, but is now a UNICEF digital public good and is available for integration with social media that we know and love, like Slack, Discord, Instagram, G Suite, and it's going to be an even more super soon, which I'm really excited about. And something even more exciting about Kindly is if you go to its landing page, which is kindly.unicef.io, you're able to kind of go click the link and train the engine so you can be a part of the solution as well, which I think makes it super exciting. And it's self-learning, so it's always updated on the latest slangs, trends, memes, emojis, everything that's out there. But yeah, that's a little bit about my work, but there's always something in the works, so keep an eye out.
Yeah, you're a little busy.
Just a little, just a little.
And hopefully your inventions are turning out a little bit better than my little monkey head here, but it's cute. And like I said, we embrace and we gotta start from somewhere. So here's my start.
Hey, I like it. I think it's super cute.
Let's try to animate him a little bit. So now that I've drawn this this monkey head here using some of our tools, and if you go to those coding cards that I mentioned, I will just point out that we've got a coding card. Eventually, when I flip through here, I swear it's in here. There we go, where it shows all of our paint editor tools and kind of gives you some tips and tricks about what they do. So if you were just watching along and unsure what I was doing there, that card should be really helpful for you. But now that I've got the head, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some code to it. So you'll see there's already some code in place here that makes this object draggable. What that means is when I'm looking at the project here on this, if it's set to draggable, I keep hitting that space. I gotta move this over to the side. I can actually drag it around on this version of the screen, so the user can drag it around. And then I have some code here. It may seem a little complex, but let's break it down here. So I have a statement here called a conditional statement, if then. And my condition here is touching the box. So I'm saying if this thing is touching the box, then do something. So I am going to put something in here. Let's just have it turn. I'm going to have it turn kind of slowly. So if I click that code, why is something's happening? Okay, so I can see something happening here. Let's move it up here where I can see it better. Nothing's happening. Okay, so it's turning slightly. If I stop the project and I restart it, no offense, Gitanjali, but I'm going to disconnect you here for a moment so that we don't get your explanation again. So if I click that green flag, it's not turning. Why? Well, that's because I only had it check once if it was touching the box at the very beginning. If I want it to turn whenever it's touching the box, I have to have it check for that to be in existence every time. So now every time it's touching the box, it's going to turn. And every time it's not touching the box, it's not going to do anything. Touching the box, turn. Not touching the box, don't turn. So just some little code magic there that we worked into our object. We'll let him sort of do his turn thing while we're chatting. And now I've got this interesting invention. I want to give it a name and maybe a description so that people can help understand its purpose and my vision. So to do that, I'm going to actually go to this other sprite called My Invention Title. And here in this costume, I can give it a name and give it a description. And this really fits, I think, well with one of the steps in your innovation process, Gitanjali, which is communicate, right? So on projects, Scratchers can provide instructions and notes on how to interact with the project. So I might say on my project side of the page over here to drag the monkey to the box to make it work and do X, Y, and Z. Or I could put instructions here inside the project on a sprite. Why is communication and education about your inventions really such a key part of your process? And you sort of mentioned how you come up with names for your inventions, but have you ever had to, kind of crowdsource a name for a project. How is maybe naming and communicating about your invention so important?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I feel like that's actually probably one of the most unique questions I've ever gotten. I don't think I've ever gotten that question. Um, I think naming a project is super, super important, right? And I feel like I've always been really bad at it. And I've never claimed to be good at it, which was super funny because I used to have a really like intense Percy Jackson phase. So I would just name everything after Greek characters. And yeah, ideas are obviously not completely like that I don't come up with them from scratch, right? Everything is usually comes from the feedback of other people and what I'm hearing everyone else say, and what everyone says sounds good too, right? And I think that's like with the advent of technology, we're learning more and more about how things can be named and how things can be more uniquely identified too. And I think something that, we talk a lot about is, well, the big elephant in the room is AI, right? But that could be one of the most incredible tools to help with naming a project, right? You put into description of exactly what it is, and it's able to give you spit something out. And even if you don't like it, you're able to change that option too. And also names never stick. Like, I don't know, like you can come up with something better if you like it a couple of years later too. I think I've changed the names of my
Rebranding.
Yeah, rebranding. It's a normal part of the solution. But no, on a side note, my roommate and I are absolutely cackling at this monkey term thing. I think this is the funniest invention ever created.
Thank you. I tried my best. Well, and I've tried to come up with what this monkey invention could do. So here's my example of communicating. So I've got my description here. But one of the things that I really like to do is to make my Scratch projects accessible to as many people as possible. So I feel like one helpful way to do that is to both show the words on the screen, but have the ability to hear them, because some of us don't read as fast as others, or it's just nice to sort of have both. I know I like subtitles when I watch shows sometimes. So there's a couple ways that we can do this. We could use text-to-speech blocks, which are in our extension library. So when you're over on the code tab and you click on the extension library, you can see there are some blocks that enable text to speech. But there is another way that we could do this, which is I could record a sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have this costume show here so that I can see what it says. Oh gosh, I'm going to hide the cat for the moment so I can see this and move some things around. Okay. So I'm going to go here to this sprite called the My Invention button. And I can maybe record my message here so that when this button appears and when it's clicked, maybe I describe my invention as this is shown, description is shown on the screen. So in order to record my voice, I'm going to be on the Sounds tab, and I'm going to click over here under Choose a Sound, but instead of choosing a sound from our sound library, I'm going to hit this Record, and that brings up a box where I can record my description. And of course, now I can't read what I said. Let's see. When the monkey touches the box, mayhem and magic happens. Okay, so I'm going to record my voice saying that now. When the monkey touches the box, mayhem and magic. So I messed that recording up, but that's okay. I can re-record. This is a good, see, I did that on purpose. Okay. When the monkey touches the box, mayhem and magic happens. So now I've got my recording. I can use these little sliders to adjust how loud, or excuse me, how long the recording is. And I'm also going to just play it here just to make sure it sounded okay. When the monkey touches the box, mayhem and magic happens. Okay, I'm going to save that. I can do all sorts of little things with my sound. Maybe if I want to adjust my voice or something, I can make it be a higher or lower pitch by adjusting the speed.
When the monkey touches the box, mayhem and magic happens.
That sounds kind of like a monkey voice, right? So, so I'm going to go with that. So now I'm going to go back here to my invention button, and I'm going to choose one of my sound blocks to play that recording. I have a couple of choices here. For instance, I'm going to grab this play sound, and then when this is visible, Let's see what happens.
When the monkey touches the box, mayhem and magic happens.
Excellent. So now I've got my description so I can hear it as well as read it. And that's hopefully made my project a little more accessible to folks. The theme for this year's Hour of Code is make the invisible visible. And I feel like we can do that by raising awareness about problems in need of solutions and bring our ideas to life through prototypes and projects and products to create, as you say, amazing things that can change the world. In past interviews, I really appreciated, and you said it again today at the top of the hour, the importance of embracing failure and being a risk taker. And you've also mentioned that if you have an idea, don't feel like you need to wait to pursue it. You certainly pursued your ideas at an early age. For those of you unaware, Gitanjali was one of Forbes 30 Under 30 in Science in 2019, as well as Time's Top Young Innovator and Time Kid of the Year. Very impressive. So I'm curious, when you are working with students in one of your global STEM workshops, which have inspired thousands of students across 46 countries, if I have that right, I'm curious, what advice do you give young innovators and new STEM learners to help them build confidence in themselves and their ideas and help them keep going when they get stuck or face frustrations? Do you have any sort of cheerleader advice for folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest piece of advice, which I feel like it can sound kind of cliche at times, but your biggest enemy is your own self-doubt. I think you think that there's a lot more things and people out to get you than there actually is. And so a lot of times when I get stuck in a rut or when something's not working, I realize that, at the end of the day, my biggest enemy is my own frustration, my own self-doubt that I can't do something right. And I think a lot of times it's especially different for someone who's super young, because when you are young, you are taking the time to pay attention to everyone who's older than you and everyone around you. And so I also like to say that if you aren't taken seriously for kind of your work, it's important to look up to the mentors and the teachers in your lives and your parents who do believe in you and who you are as a person. And so it's important to pay attention to those whose opinions do matter versus those who don't.
I love that. Words to live by, no matter what age you are.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
is important to keep in mind. I've been playing around here. As you can see, we can do so many things with this project now. We could add code to make sure objects appear in the same position each time by maybe using a block like go to X and Y. We could use blocks like turn or set size or color effect to change the way that things look when they appear on the screen. We could also do things like copy costumes from the sprite library to add to another sprite. So we could look for costumes such as our hat and glasses if we look under our fashion. And maybe we want to, give Scratch Cat or let's put them on our light bulb. I'm going to copy these glasses and find my light bulb here. And so when it turns on now, it's wearing glasses. I don't know. We can do all sorts of goofy things with this. The other thing that we could do is take a sprite from the sprite library and animate it. So I encourage you to see those coding cards in the video description for more suggestions. As a reminder, we have all sorts of ideas in these coding cards for you to try. And then once the project's finished, we can add any information we want onto the project page and share it. Now, I forgot to hit that remix button when I started doing this, but that's okay because I can hit it now. And my changes are already saved in this remix. So as soon as it finishes doing the remix process, hold please. There we go. So now you can see all of my changes are here. I can go back to this project page and I can add any notes, things like drag the monkey to the box. Oh, see, typing on cue is hard. Okay, and then I can add some notes and credits, maybe thank Gitanjali for her voiceover or whatever it is that you want to add here. And then once we're ready, we can actually hit this share button and share the project. And now that we have this shared, others can see it in the community. They can go in, they can use that see inside button to see how you created your objects and your project, and they can maybe copy some of the ideas and remix them for their own invention. The other thing that we can do is we can grab this project URL up here. You can either copy here from the browser bar or use this copy link button. And then I can grab that link and I can go to my Hour of Code Studio, which if you're on the Scratch main page, if you scroll down, you'll find our Hour of Code Studio currently there. And I can add a comment to add, oh, there's Gitanjali, so inspiring. I love that comment. Thank you for that. And I can add my own comment here where I can say, please add this to the studio, and I can paste in the URL link, and then wonderful, our curators will take a look and they can add it to our studio. One thing I will note, they are our volunteer curators, so it can take some time sometimes to work through all the comments. So I just ask folks to be patient. But then it'll be in our studio, and this studio will be open all this week, celebrating Computer Science Education Week. And so you can feel free to take your time and then add your project here to share with the rest of us. One thing I will point out, if you don't have a Scratch account, if I go back here to my project, if you don't have a Scratch account, so you can't save it yet, one thing you can do once you've made your changes is go here to this File menu and choose to save the project to your computer. This will save a file, and then you can upload it later from your computer if you want to add it to an account, or if you keep wanting to make changes just for you. So even if you haven't got a Scratchcat account set up yet, or if you forgot your login information, don't worry, you can still save what you've been working on with me here. Gitanjali, our Scratchers were curious to know how you got started in coding, since, as you mentioned, Kindly is an API. It involves code. What languages, maybe besides block-based programming languages like Scratch, have you learned, and why coding? Why did you get started with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I got started at like a super, super young age, and I got started with, I think it was just Python. And then that kind of, from there, it broke out into a lot of different languages and a lot of different things that, I started to get involved in. And the reason I started learning how to code was for the purpose of my projects and what I wanted to do. And so it wasn't really something that I was like, oh, at this age, I'm going to learn how to code, right? And a lot of times that's not how it goes, right? You're thinking at this specific age, like, I'm going to come up with this idea, which involves me to code, unfortunately. And so I'm going to have to sit down and learn how to code. And so I learned how to code in Python to begin with. And then outside of that, I started participating in all sorts of programs and web development classes and learned how to code in HTML and CSS. From there, I learned how to code in JavaScript, Ruby, and R, and all sorts of other languages, which sound kind of foreign, and that's kind of what it is. But they all serve a similar purpose, and they all just have a little bit of a different syntax. But block coding is the best way to kind of ease your way into all of that. I actually started with Scratch when I was super, super young. And so tools like this really help me understand kind of what a high level thinking looks like when it comes to coding, and how we're able to, how computers think and why they think that way. And once you're able to understand that, it's just kind of about understanding how to type it out. To make it easier. But I think that's my favorite part about Scratch, is I was always able to kind of see and visualize exactly what was going on. And so block coding makes a lot of things easier and a lot of things happen. And if you're able to do this, you're able to code in every other language that I just said, which is kind of, it's kind of peaceful to kind of think that and realize that this isn't the end all be all. There's so much more out there in the world to explore.
I love that. And I think that it's really exciting when you have a vision and you can bring it to life yourself. I mean, sometimes it's great to work with partners, but sometimes explaining your vision and getting it on the page is hard. So I had a similar path where I wanted to make something happen. And so I taught myself how to code in order to be able to bring that vision to life. And the one thing I love about block coding, as you said, it's a great start because we don't have to worry about things like syntax and punctuation, capitalization that you have to worry about in some other languages because the blocks are here for you. So you can focus on things more like sequence, the order that things happen. You can focus and more easily find errors and bugs and readjust your code. And those are all mindsets that you can take through any programming language, right? The skills of being able to break code down, being able to write it in a sequence, being able to break a big problem down into smaller pieces called decomposition. You can do that all here in Scratch, and then you can take that and apply it in so many other places. I will just point out one thing that I always find handy when I'm coding in Scratch, especially at the beginning when I was learning code. There's this option when you right-click on the stage to add a comment to your project. And one of the things I sometimes like to do is to leave comments. I could also right-click on a block and say add a comment and attach the comment right to the block. And sometimes I leave myself notes, but also other people can see them so it can help them too, hopefully, about what I did here, like why I chose what I did, how I coded something. So when I come back to it later, I have that refresher about why did I make the choice that I made as I'm iterating and changing and making things different. So one of the things I just will point out here is it's like a little sort of notebook, digital notebook right in the project that I often find handy as I'm trying to remember how things work and move around my projects after the fact. I'm gonna pop over to our other project for a moment because we have about 20 minutes left to chat. And I wanted to make sure that I highlighted our second project here, which is our kindness community project. So in this project, you can share a message of kindness, which is inspired by Gitanjali's innovative approach to anti-bullying efforts with her innovation Kindly. And in this project, we're suggesting that you add a message of kindness and then add yourself joining our kindness community. So again, you'll find a link to this project on Scratch Cat's account, or you can look in the video description below to find the link. But let's again sort of play this project and see what it says.
Hi, I'm Gitanjali Rao. I created an AI-based anti-cyberbullying service called Kindly that aims to detect and prevent cyberbullying at an early stage. Kindness is important to me because it looks different to everyone, and I think empathy is one of the most important things. Will you write a message of kindness to share? Remix this project and add your message of kindness to the labeled sprite. Then, add your character to the labeled sprite to join our kindness community.
Excellent. So here's where we can add that kindness message.
Thanks for joining my community of kindness.
So once again, thank you for the fabulous voiceover work on this project. And I will also point out a little fun detail, if I may. I'll zoom in on your arms here. One of the things that you shared with me when we were coming up with your character was that you were a Taylor Swift fan, if I'm not misrepresenting you here. And so we know about the friendship bracelets. So I just want to point out we have our special code and kindness inspired friendship bracelets that Gitanjali is rocking in this project. So this project, just to kind of get us started here, again, if you are logged in, you can click that remix button to remix this project and start making your edits. There is a sprite here that calls for your message. So here's where you can type in your message of kindness. You can remove the text that is here and start adding in what you would like to say back to the community. And again, if you go to the coding cards that are linked in the video description below, I'll just pull them up here. you can see examples of some things that we suggest that you can try with this project and how you can work this project. We also have a little reminder there about our community guidelines because, of course, at Scratch, we deeply believe in kindness and treating everyone with respect. So we love to have that little reminder where we can. And yeah, one thing I would like to try as we're talking with some more questions here is adding a character to represent myself in this project. So you'll see that there is a sprite here that says put your character here. Now, some of you may have a character that you've developed and you have as your little persona there on your profile, but others of you may not. And I want to share just one fun thing that I love to do because I think we've already established I'm maybe not always the world's greatest artist. And so one of the ways that I like to start creating character is sometimes instead of, as we were talking about earlier, instead of starting from scratch, maybe start from something that's already built and improve upon it from there. So while I could draw freehand, like I did with my monkey here, I can also go and explore my sprite library and maybe find some people sprites that I can remix in order to make my character. So I'm just gonna grab a couple of characters here, and you'll notice as I'm grabbing some elements from these different characters, perhaps we can have a few more questions of Gitanjali here. So while I'm putting this together, Gitanjali, can you tell us a little bit more about Kindly or your efforts to keep to spread kindness, and maybe do you have any ideas of how we can keep spreading kindness long after this event?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kindly is my anti-cyberbullying service, obviously, that I was bringing up earlier. And I think no, the reason I wanted to build a tool like Kindly is because cyberbullying doesn't really have any motive behind it, right? And I wanted to come up with a way that it was on the bully side of things. It gave teenagers a chance to reevaluate what they were saying online. And so I like to say that Kindly is built by a teenager for a teenager. And so that was kind of the goal behind it. And I think, the kindness community is like with this project is such a great way to kind of just think about gratitude and kindness for other people and leave messages. And I think that is so, so important. Even taking 5 minutes out of your day to do something like that is incredibly important to me. And I really pride myself in, the kindness that I carry with me and the gratitude. But I think the one of the biggest ways to kind of practice kindness and really bring that across is I'm a big believer that kindness should be taught just like science and social studies and math and language arts. It needs to be just as integrated in our lives as everything else is. And so I think it's important to, just do the little things in life that makes you feel kind. I am one of the board members for the Children's Kindness Network based out of Tennessee. And they have 4 big sayings, and it's being kind to yourself, being kind to animals, being kind to others, and being kind to the earth. And so if you kind of stick with that, that allows you to be grounded and, feel kinder on a daily basis.
I love that. And one of the things about I think kindness is that it spreads, right? It's contagious in a way, and sometimes even just one helpful, constructive bit of feedback, one positive comment from somebody online can really adjust the way that your day is going. I think that sometimes when we are in when we receive negative feedback or maybe somebody says something unkind, it can kind of throw off our day, right? And so I'm wondering, when you have maybe received unconstructive feedback or harsh comments, how do you encourage yourself and how would you encourage others to keep at their dreams and goals and aspirations? One of our scratchers was saying, especially as a young girl, how can we learn to be brave and not perfect when entering spaces that maybe feel dominated with with less representation of us in those spaces? Thoughts on that? Brave,
Yeah.
not perfect.
No, for sure. I think the biggest thing is addressing that it's a problem. It is a problem, but it is getting better. And I think I wanted to put that kind of positivity in everyone's brain, kind of to help them realize that, you're not alone in this. If you feel alone, you truly aren't alone. Something else that, is important to me is I've been thinking recently about how we've been talking more about women in STEM and how I feel like women in STEM have been doing better, but we very rarely see Fortune 500 CEOs that are women as well. And so I also really like to talk about the expansion of what women look like outside of just STEM fields, looking at business fields and looking at other opportunities for them too. And so I think something to kind of recognize is that being a woman isn't an impairment. It's like it's an asset, and it's important because you're a trailblazer for everyone else behind you. And that's kind of how I feel, right? When I'm doing something unique, when I'm doing something different, I'm a trailblazer. I'm not alone in this journey. There's so many other women who are going to want to do similar things when they see kind of that it's possible and that it's real and that they're happy with it.
I love that. I agree. I think that you are a great trailblazer and role model, and I love that you recognize that in yourself and the confidence that's there. And I think that it's one of those things where you don't have to do big, amazing things too to be a mentor or a help to somebody. Even when I was learning to code, uh, just just if I knew a simple trick that somebody else didn't know that I could share with them, I could make a difference, right? I could teach them something, and then they might have a little tip or trick they could share back with me, and I would learn something. And so when I come in sometimes into spaces where I'm facilitating or teaching about Scratch, I love to sort of get messy, make mistakes, get stuck and unstuck, and learn from each other because we can all help each other out. And I think everything is just better for it, right? uh, as you were talking, obviously, I was sort of playing with this project,
I like the green
and
hair. I think
so
it's super cool.
let's see if I can get to the screen where I can see the character.
Hi, I'm
Whoops.
Gitanjali Rao. I created an AI-based anti-cyberbullying
I just
service
started
called
talking again, I
Kindly
guess.
that
Again.
aims to detect and prevent cyberbullying at an early stage.
Oh, I know what I did. Okay.
Oh no, I'm disconnected.
Yes, I apologize. I am disconnecting you. I'm gonna jump right to the inside of the project and see if I can get us to the final screen. So now you
Thanks
can
for
see
joining my community of kindness.
I've added my character here. Whoop. Okay, so I'm going to hide this for the moment so we can see our character. And I've just taken a bunch of different pieces of the character and sort of cobbled them together to create this character. And one of the things you might have noticed that I did was I sort of right-clicked and clicked duplicate on my costume. And then once I duplicated it, I just manipulated it a little bit. I just added some other slight movements to sort of animate my character so that it will move as I run some code. So now that I have this here, what I can do is try something as simple as next costume. And I'm going to just keep having it change costume. Woo! Really fast dancer. So I'm going to slow that down. I'm going to take a weight block here. I'm going to add just a really small weight to my code here to just slow that down. And now I've got sort of a dancing character that I've added to this project to join the kindness community. And so I can go back in here to the code and I can say that when that character shows up, I'm going to have it do this little dance move for us, celebrating being part of our kindness community. We're almost out of time. I hate to let you go, but you are so busy that I need to. But I really want to extend a really big thank you to Gitanjali for joining me on this live create along to celebrate Hour of Code 2024. And I also want to thank all of you who joined us this hour, or those of you who are watching this as a replay, because we have folks around the globe. So I know some of you are sleeping right now. Really, I hope you've been inspired to, as Gitanjali says in the project, create something awesome that helps change the world. Do remember to look in the video description for links to our starter projects that you can remix, our downloadable coding cards to help you with ideas and tips and more. And don't forget, when you've created your project and you're ready, feel free to share it and comment with a link to it in our Hour of Code studio, which will be open all this week. So you can share your awesome inventions and messages of kindness with our Scratch community. We really can't wait to see what you will create. Gitanjali, I'll give you the floor. Any last minute thoughts that you'd love to share with our Scratchers as we're wrapping up here today?
I mean, no, this was awesome. I had a great time, and obviously go explore and check out the other projects on the Scratch website as well. There's so much to do. Probably anything you could possibly imagine on there as well. And so, yeah, take your first jump into coding and just remember that if it doesn't work the first time, there's so many other times.
Absolutely. I rarely get it right the first time, but that practice is better than perfection, right? It's not about being perfect. It's about sort of making small changes, constantly getting better, having that growth mindset that we can improve, and believing in ourselves, and we can do amazing things with that. Really inspired by all the work that you're doing. Can't wait to continue to watch your journey over these next years as you continue to innovate and create. Thank you so much again also for sharing your innovation process with us and speaking with us today. I think I know I've gained a lot of great thoughts are now rumbling around in my head about things that I can do. And I know our Scratchers are really grateful as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you around in the new year for some additional tutorial videos and Scratch events on the platform. So keep your eye on the Scratch homepage for more information and ways to create and innovate. We'll see you soon.